Hello and welcome to Instant Impact Events with your hosts, CJ and Cheryl Williams. In each episode, we cover event-related subjects from how to put on events, event planning, audiovisual, and event production. At events and in life, it only takes an instant to make an impact. So let's jump right into today's topic.
Welcome to Instant Impact Events. I'm CJ.
And I'm Cheryl. Hi guys, welcome to another episode. We're excited to have you here with us.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, and we're starting to stack up these episodes we got going. If you haven't listened to the previous ones,
go back.
Wherever you're watching or listening to this, the other ones should be on there for you. So make sure you go back. And we've talked about all kinds of different topics. Each week we cover something.
A different subject,
different topic, and really dive into more of that. And like we've said on previous episodes, we like to keep them short and sweet and very on point for whatever it is that we're covering, and that way it's more like bite-sized pieces that you're getting.
Yeah, too long, not too drawn out.
Because I know everyone's got a lot going on. You want to be able to get in,
lives,
grab the information, and then put it into use, and not just be like overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, this is so long. I'll listen to that later, right?
Yes.
So if we have some that are a little bit longer. We're attempting to keep them shorter so you can get in, get the information, and keep moving on.
We had some that were long.
Yeah, we did.
Sorry about that.
Not really, though.
Hey, we were
because we covered whatever needed to be covered for that particular topic.
Just speaking.
So, but we've been, asking for feedback and for questions and information, and everyone said, "Hey, the shorter ones are great because we're able to, listen,
bite-sized pieces,
and get the information, and then continue on." So that's what we're working on. Like you said, this is an ever-evolving thing, and we're wanting to always take it and take your insights and gather that. So as always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to shoot them our way. And like we were saying last week, it's springtime. So what are you guys, doing? I always love spring for new beginnings and fresh starts. And speaking of new beginnings and fresh starts, we've got lots of that coming up. Probably on the next episode, we'll be talking more about that for you. So stay tuned for that, because we do have some new beginnings and some fresh starts.
Different everything
happening. So stay tuned. We're not going to drop many more hints than that.
No.
Take it as you wish. But
so we are talking about venue contracts today.
Now, this could be very long and cumbersome. So
we're not going to make it too long.
I have bulleted it down to the most important things that you want
not the long list.
No.
Because
contracts, when people see contracts, like, oh my goodness, I don't want to sign a contract. I don't know what I'm signing. I don't know what should be in the contract. What am I supposed to do or say, or how do I read it? Because some contracts from venues can be very overwhelming. Some of them are very short and sweet and to the point. Other ones, it's like a whole very legal document with a lot of legal jargon in it. And so you don't know what's being said or not. So the main thing is you want to be able to go through and read the contract with understanding, but also making sure that the things that you need in the contract are there, right?
Yes.
Because the venue is going to make sure their butt's covered.
Yes.
So your job is to make sure that yours is covered as well, right?
Yes.
So when you're reading a contract or when you're negotiating and you're saying, well, this needs to be in the contract, that's to protect you. That's because you want to make sure that you have in there what you need, because the contract is written from the venue for the venue. So that's why it's important. And the more vague that they can make it, the more that they have more wiggle room to be able to move you around.
Get out of something.
Well, and not even that. It's like, okay, you've been talking about this specific space of your meeting space. You have a name and all that. And so that's a space that you're working on. Well, if that's not written into your contract, they could change that at any moment on you, right?
Happened too.
And so that's why when we're talking about contracts, you want to keep it simple. You want to know what it is. You don't want to get overwhelmed. Take a deep breath, read through it, see what's in there. But then you have to make sure that you are including the important components for you.
That you need.
And we're going to go through today and address what those must-have components in the contract are for you. Now, could you have other ones? You could. You could always add more. You can always have additional addendums or details or all that kind of stuff written into the contract or as addendums after, additional pages. Basically, an addendum to a contract is just another page that lays out in more detail what you're talking about, right? Because it doesn't have a specific space in the contract yet, so you would just add it as an addendum.
Okay.
So the main thing is your contract that you have with the venue is making sure that everything is laid out the way that you have verbally agreed but now it's in written word, right? So if there's certain things that you've talked to the venue about, and you guys
Make sure
have
that's
come,
noted also.
yeah, you've come to an agreement, that needs to be in the contract, because verbally stating something, if it's not written
You're
down.
not shaking somebody's hand.
Well, and in this industry, there's a lot of turnover. So if you're booking an event 6 months, a year in advance, you could be working with one person and you have everything agreed to with this person. You're moving forward.
And then
well,
the last
that
month,
person is gone now. Maybe they're on maternity leave. Maybe they're on sick leave. Maybe they got fired. Maybe they're on vacation. Maybe they quit. I mean, you don't know.
Only work from home.
There's all kinds of things that can come up. And so what you want to have is you want to have this contract that anyone can look at and they can say, yep, okay, I see this, yeah. And you can point out, like, this is what we agreed to. It's in the contract. So whomever picks this up now, right, and is running with it, everyone's on the same page, because it wasn't just a verbal agreement anymore. You actually have things written and signed on paper.
Like bringing in your own AV.
That is
you discussed about it.
Yeah.
And then you get there and it's something totally
It's like, well, that wasn't in the contract.
Yeah,
so
this is a union house. You're not bringing your own in here.
Yeah. The whole point of a contract is to lay out the details of what you've agreed to. So whether you're the one taking it, whether someone else is taking it, doesn't matter. Everyone understands the room, the requirements, the things that you've agreed to, because it's written on the contract. So like you were talking about a second ago, a lot of venues, they want you to use their in-house AV. Now, it's not really in-house. They're farming that out to a different company as well, because most places don't have their own in-house AV. They're using an outside company, but it's one that they have an agreement with that they're going to use.
Unless you're in Vegas or something and they stay there.
They could, but they normally kick down, something to use them, and they get a kickback on that. So then they're like, oh, this is our in-house AV. This is our preferred provider of AV, right? That's how they're going to normally set that up. And so from the beginning, you want to let them know, hey, I'm bringing in my own AV.
Correct.
So if that's a deal breaker, then you need to know that on the front end, right?
Yep.
So that's one of the things that when you're working with a venue, you're negotiating with a venue, you got to let them know up front, I'm bringing in my own AV. And they're like, well, you can't do that. Well, I've done that before, and that's what I'm going to continue doing. So
even at this same event.
If that's not something that's going to work for you, then I'll have to find a different venue. So first and foremost is you're bringing in your own AV. Second is you need to clarify that it's not a union hall, right? You do not want a union house when you are going into any venue, hotel or otherwise, because then you have to abide by whatever the union says, whatever their rules are, and your hands are really tied on what you can do. That you can't even bring your own stuff in from your car into the meeting space, right? Because they have to carry that for you, and you have to pay them to do that.
Yes. Or if the lights have to be turned off.
Yeah, you can't flip a switch.
During our video section, somebody is going to have to sit there for $50 an hour.
You have to pay them.
And for the whole event to be able to do that. Or something like that.
So it's all these additional things.
About Caesars in Vegas, we're working with. It matters.
Here's the other thing. It's some places, if they're union. They're not going to allow you to do anything. Other ones are, their workers are union. However, you can still have some leeway as to what you can do yourself.
That's the reason we work with certain hotels in Vegas.
Right, and that's another reason that you have to know, like, how union are they? Is it union from top to bottom? Like a lot of places in Chicago, it's union, right? You cannot do anything yourself.
They have to set up your equipment for you.
They have to bring everything in for you. They have to flip a switch on and off for you.
Remember when we had
it was a mess.
Somebody in the seat up in the room up there had to watching us
to make sure
we
didn't do anything wrong. So it's just, think about it. There's other places where their people are union, just to make sure that they, the union is however they're working that, but you can still come in and do things, but they're just covered under the union approval for their working. So it depends on, you have to know how union are we here or not, okay? So that's one thing to have, and it's got to be in your contract. Like, hey, I can bring in my own stuff. I can bring in my own boxes from my car or my own suitcases from the plane into the room. These are all things, and if they're like, oh no, we need you
well,
to pay
it might
someone
have to
do
be
that.
delivered. You know, if you got stuff for you sent it to the hotel, then a union person has to bring it up.
Yep.
I mean, that you're not going to go down there to delivery
and you've got to pay
pick it
them
up.
to do that. So
Right.
that's why it's important to know union or not, and that needs to be in your contract. The other thing is you need to have the specific name of whatever room or rooms that you are going to have. That needs to be written into your contract. So if it's ballroom A, B, and C, that needs to be in there. If it's marquee 1, 2, 3, that needs to be whatever the name of your ballroom or space or expo space. It has a name. The name of that space needs to be written into the contract. That way they can't change it on you.
And
they
they
can't
will.
say, well, that wasn't the space. We had you over here in
They're
this
going to
one.
want to give it to somebody
Oh,
else because they want more space. So they're going to take this whole section
and they're going to stick you in whatever
and
they
then
stick
put
you in.
you somewhere else.
Right. So that's why identifying the meeting space, the name of the room or rooms that you're going to be in. Now this goes for the main room, breakouts, meals, if it's expo space, if you're having stuff on a patio.
If you're having the breakout room for sales or something like that.
If you're having those, if you're doing registration in the hallway, like it needs to be, it needs to be clearly identified and labeled in your contract. This is the name of the space or spaces, clearly stated in there, because that way you know what you're dealing with, and it cannot change. They have to come to you and say, hey, could we move you into this room because it's a better fit for you? Or hey, we can give you more space over here.
And it's not as far away
Right.
in a corner.
So that's one thing, but it has to be written in the contract. If it's not written in the contract and you're just dealing with an arbitrary name, they could change it at any time on you and say like, well, we were just talking about that. That wasn't actually your room, right? So important that the specific meeting space is named and whatever other spaces you're going to be using in your contract and identified there. Because that's what you're signing, that's what you're agreeing to, that's what they're agreeing to give you as well, because both of you are signing it. They're signing it and so are you. So this is like, this is what we agreed to here, this is what we expect.
Correct.
Right? Because if not, then you can say, well, we're over here. No, look, on the contract, we agreed to this, and then you have something to back it up. Versus, well, verbally, we talked about this.
We said we'll put you on the third floor.
Yeah, but now you're on the third floor in the basement, and this is kind of what you get. So you need to know the names of. It's happened, has it not? Okay, so and it's not funny when it happens. Let me tell you.
Oh.
You're expecting something, you show up, we're like, oh, you're over here. Yeah, we've been talking about this for the last year, but this is where you are because we're sold out, so you get what you get. It's
and
like,
you can't move.
No, because there's no place to move to. So again, be specific. The other thing you want to have in your contract is right next to that meeting space name, it needs to say 24-hour hold. What a 24-hour hold is, now you wouldn't think you need to ask for this, but
You do.
when you're asking for space, you want that meeting space for the whole 24 hours of
every
each day, right? Now, what does that mean? It means that that space, that room or rooms is
locked
yours,
in.
but it's yours for 24 hours. So from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. of each of those days, that is your space. That means no one can come in the evening and have a reception.
Right. Kick us out of our ballroom.
Yep.
Take down all the AV. And mid-afternoon, you have to, matter of fact, even event is done earlier, even though we're done at 7.
Yep.
We have to get out by 5:36 latest, tear everything down for a wedding
That they booked.
that they booked because
space.
it wasn't a 24-hour hold. And then we have to wait until the wedding's done because no way we're doing it in the morning.
To reset up.
Yes, and it's getting 10 o'clock,
All
11 p.m.,
because
12 p.m. when their last guest is leaving, that we can kick them to the curb and get the hell out to reset up all of our equipment.
all
That means
because,
double screens, projectors, all the seating, everything.
and why did that happen? Because whoever booked the venue did not request a 24-hour hold. They ask you, and this is why they ask you this, if you've ever booked a venue, they ask, so what are the times of your event? What do they ask? Well, the time of my event is from 8 to 5. I mean, that's pretty much the time of the event.
Yeah.
But you're not thinking.
5. We get another gig in there.
Right? You're not thinking,
Why they ask
8 to 5. Yeah, that's the time of the event, but I want to be in the room at 6:30 to then set up and have it. And then, hey, we might want to have a team meeting in the room. We might want to mingle. We might want to hang out a little longer.
Right.
Until 7, 8 o'clock, whatever you might want to do, right, in your space. But the reason they're asking you that is because then they want to book that same space they're giving you at the times that you're not going to be using it. So if your event gets done at 5, technically,
to them, they'll be ready by 7.
They're like, well, then we could have an evening event in here at 6:30 or 7 o'clock until midnight.
Yep.
And then they could have their room back at 8. And they don't care. That means that you're going to have to tear down and take all your admin stuff out and all your stuff that you have under the tables. And because they're just going to move the room around. But you have to take all your stuff out. And then you have to set it up again. So just by having one little thing that says 24-hour hold saves all the headache and hassle.
Big time.
I mean, because has that not happened?
It's happened. And I was not happy.
Well, and it's normally at the most inopportune time.
Horns came out. I mean, Horns was like,
it was more than that. There was like seething.
Smoke.
Because you set all this stuff at once and you expect it to be there for the duration of your event and then you tear it down, right? You're not then expecting to set up for 2 days, tear down that one night, set it up again that night for another day or 2.
And sometimes you have outside help to help you set up and tear down.
And that means you have to pay them to come back and help you.
Right.
If they can do that.
Because the hotel's not going to do it.
No, they don't do it. They just take care of their chairs, their tables, whatever's theirs.
Their own stuff.
But then they're like, oh, well, you don't have the room now. You got to go. So 24-hour hold, if there's only one thing that you learn from us, from any of our episodes or any of our conversations, you must have a 24-hour hold on any space that you book from here on out. And if you're working with anybody, you need to ask them the same thing. Do you have a 24-hour hold on this space? Do you have a 24-hour hold on this space?
Even at the end of the event day.
Yeah.
You want to say you're done by a certain time.
But you still
have the room.
Yeah.
Until midnight or whatever.
You want that, the simple little words, 24-hour hold.
Because even that last day.
Make all the difference.
That last day, they can still attempt to kick you out.
Early
For their event.
Yeah. So make sure whomever you're working with, if you're working with other people, and maybe you're coming in to set up AV, right? And you're like, well, do you guys have a 24-hour hold on this space? And they're like, what's that? And you're going to need to inform them on what that is. And if they don't have it, they need to go re-add that to the contract so that you're not having to set up and tear down and set back up the same things just because other things are being booked.
Right.
During that exact same time, at that exact same space, in that exact same meeting room.
Right.
Okay? So, name and 24-hour hold. The other thing is your outside AV. You want to make sure, like we talked about earlier, that you have in your contract that you can bring in your own outside AV.
Yes.
And there's going to be no surcharges, there's going to be no upcharges, there's going to be none of that for what you're bringing in. Because sometimes they're like, well, you could bring in your own AV, but we're going to charge you
$250 a day for it.
For that. That's cheap.
That's cheap, yeah.
Or we're going to charge you X percentage of what it would have cost or what we thought it should be.
Because number one, their price is already going to be this high.
Yeah, they're too much.
So of course that tax is going to be that high also.
And there's no reason to pay that. They're not doing anything for that. They don't need that money, right? That's not money. And that's, again, if you agree to that, well, then that's what you agreed to. But if you say, no, I'm going to go somewhere else, they'll normally work with you on that because they want your business, especially now.
Yeah.
The other thing is you want a COVID clause. There used to be one, you call it like a...
Oh, God.
What was it called? It had a name.
Act of God.
Yeah, like an act of God or something. If there was a major... like before, we had one that was like a hurricane that came through.
Well, it was Dallas.
Houston flooding. And like a storm came through and it flooded the whole
After I was set up.
We were all set up and then the venue flooded. The whole town, the whole city flooded.
Nobody can make it out the airport because they closed it.
Right. Well, no one could make it down the street. I mean, we were looking at the one, you couldn't make it down the street.
Right.
So, again, that was an act of God, right? So that's in contracts now most of the time. Like, hey, if there's something that happens then we won't charge you.
Right.
We'll move it to another date that we both can agree on, and your monies, your deposit, things like that will go towards that. Well,
Just
now there
like
needs to be a COVID clause.
Right. The same with, we had to cancel the event because the speaker's office all got COVID.
Yep.
So we had to cancel the whole event because the office got COVID.
Right. So you want to make sure that's in your contract as well. Is if something happens due to COVID,
The week of.
or well, because when you get that now,
Yeah.
you're down for however
Yeah.
many days it is
Yeah.
deemed 5, 10, 20, whatever it is
Right,
now. I
yeah.
don't know. And each area is different as to how long you have to be in isolation and what you can and can't. So that needs to be in your contract, because if someone on your staff, if one of your speakers, if anything happens or goes on, that you have to, and it's always last minute because you don't know these things ahead of time, right?
Yep.
It's very last minute, and normally last minute cancellations, you're on the hook for the deposit usually and some more
Yes. So you're
additional.
gonna make sure that you can change that date.
Yeah, just like, hey, if something comes up and it's COVID related, we need to cancel, we want to reschedule, the monies that we've paid so far will not be penalized, it'll go towards that. Most places nowadays are okay with that, but again, if it's not written in the contract, it might not be. So make sure that's in there along with the act of God, type of thing. You also have that clause in there that if someone gets sick, if something happens, you're able to then transfer that, and you don't have to decide right that moment. You're just gonna cancel that event, and it's gonna stay there, whatever monies and things, and then you're gonna transfer it to another date when you're able to look at your calendar and work with the venue and figure out what they have available, what works for you, and then you rebook it, and the monies that you have paid apply to that, and you don't lose out on right?
Because you don't want to lose your money that fast.
No. And the other thing you want to look at are room blocks. A lot of times venues like to throw in room blocks of X amount of rooms.
It's good and bad.
It's normally not good, okay?
Yeah.
And the reason is because you can still request a discounted rate for your attendees without putting your butt on the line for paying for rooms, right? So you can just say,
they want up to 50 and 100 rooms.
right, or a couple hundred depending on the size of your event.
And then
if you don't fill all those,
they want you to pay.
you're having to pay. So room blocks, you want to be leery of those. I would rather you do a smaller amount or no room block at all, just a discounted room rate that they can have a code, they call and they get that discounted rate, and you're not on the hook for picking up any of the rooms that don't get collected. The other thing you can do is you want to have in your contract, if you're going to get rooms comp for staff, for speakers, other things, those all need to be written out
You need
in the
your
contract
7 or
as
whatever
well.
it's going to be. And don't forget, the speaker is going to want a better room. So always first...
The headlining speaker, let's put it
yes,
that way.
the main... Always ask for a suite.
Yeah.
No mini suites, just ask for a suite. And plus the staff.
And those are normally comped. That has to be in the contract though. So you want those things written, like what kind of a room are they getting? How many, suites are you getting versus how many, junior suites or regular rooms or whatever you're getting. And those are going to be comped for X nights, like the night before the event through the night after the event. That's normally how you want those to go. But if you can have your staff rooms comped because you've negotiated your contract, right? And that's the other thing. It all comes down to negotiation. Just like we've talked about, we have an episode completely on food and beverage of how do you negotiate that? How do you talk about that? That's all. I would rather you pay for the food and beverage versus the meeting space, right?
Yes.
So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to that one. You want to pay, if you could get the space comped because you're paying for food and beverage, that again needs to be in the contract, that all the details that you have talked about have to be in your contract.
Including parking.
Parking is another one. You want comped parking or parking validation for anyone who comes to your event.
Yes.
That's going to be...
Work hard on that validation, because any discount, because they're going to spend $25 a day or more.
Most of the time you can get
that discount.
parking validation.
Get that discount.
Which means they have a ticket, they come, and you have a place where they can stamp it, or someone's there they can go, and that means they were at your event, they validated that they were there, so your parking for that parking is comped, right? So that can add up, and if you can say, that's something, again, you can negotiate. Everything when you're working at the venue is negotiation. So the better you get at negotiating, the better you get at asking. I mean, what's the worst they can say? No.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, then you're working with another venue who says yes.
Start
So
practicing in the certain stores that you can butter.
Right. Well, you just start talking. It's like, hey, I want this, this, and this. And they're like, well, I can give you this, but not this, but some of this. Okay, great. Hold on. And then you go over to this venue and you're like, okay, well, I want this, this, and this. And they're like, okay, sure, you can have that, that, and that.
Right.
Great. All right.
From
I'm going to go with this
experience.
venue over here because they're giving me all the things
Everything
that I want,
you wanted.
plus more. They're like, well, we could throw in this. I'm like, great. Awesome.
Right. And that kind of event is going to take care of you even more.
Right. So the ones who are working for your business, the ones who are willing to throw in more freebies, I mean, rooms cost them nothing. It's sitting there whether it's used or not. Sleeping rooms and meeting space. Food costs them a little bit of hard cost because they had to pay for it, so they have to prepare it.
Labor make it.
You're right. So things that parking costs them nothing. They can throw that in. Meeting space costs them nothing. Hotel rooms cost them nothing. So things where there's no hard cost. Food, you're going to have to pay for some food. Now, could they throw in some additional? Yes. Could they say, hey, you're going to pay for $5,000 for the food, but we're actually going to give you $7,500, right? Or hey, you pay for $20,000 worth of food, and we're going to give you $40,000. Like they could work that because their markup on this food, right, and beverage is crazy. Okay, it's ridiculous. So I don't know about you, but a gallon of coffee sure as heck doesn't cost $500, and at venues it does. So it's golden. So again, they have to pay for some hard costs, but there's some things that cost them next to nothing to be able to do. So the better that you get at negotiating, the better that you get, and think of it really not even, it's more of like a conversation more than negotiation.
And you're going to be talking to different hotels.
Yeah.
So the ones you're not going to work with, that's your practice for asking for things. If they have it or not, but you're still asking everybody the same 10 questions of discounts that you want.
And you want to have your list.
And different ways of saying it too.
Yeah, because just because someone has space available, it's not about having space available. It's having space available and working with the other things that you're needing or the other requests that you have.
Correct.
And then the main thing is everything that has been verbally agreed to needs to show up in the contract. You don't sign the contract if all the things that you verbally agreed to are not in there.
Make sure you write those notes down. Yes, they agreed to this, they agreed to that.
And then let's say you have 5 venues and they all have space, right? And they're all comparable on pricing of the space. Then it's like, okay, who's going to do the 24-hour hold? Who's going to give me parking validation? Who's giving me the suite and the extra rooms? Who's doing the meeting space for free and giving me food and beverage and I'm paying for it?
Getting me in the room the night before.
Right. So that's another thing you need to have on your contract is
getting in the day before.
Setup needs to be the day before. And that has to be written in your contract. What
Not
time?
The night before.
No, the day
before.
At least by noon. But 9 o'clock in the morning, we better. 8, 9. So you have it the whole day before, and they shouldn't be charging you for that either.
No.
So these are all things that you want to have written out. Setup times, setup events, 24-hour hold. What are the times of your events? What are you on the line for? What are you being charged for? What deposits do you need up front to have that? When do they need the other deposits? Who's giving you room comps? Who's giving you discounted room rates for your attendees without you being on the hook and on the line for a room block?
Yes.
All these things are important. And again, it's a conversation. Just like we're having a conversation here, you talk to anybody else. When you are working with a venue, don't get afraid of asking. You don't get because you don't ask. The more you ask, the more you get. The more conversation you have, they have a lot that they can give,
a lot.
if you ask, right? If you're willing to come in and say, I'll pay full price for the room, I'll pay full price for all of the staff rooms, we'll have everyone pay for parking, we'll do a 500 room block, and we'll be on the hook for 50% of that. I mean, it's asinine, right?
It adds up.
It adds up very quickly, and especially the bigger your events get, the faster it adds up. The faster because you need more space, you need more people, you need more things, and it all continues.
The person's not going to want to do another event with you.
Well, if you're the one that's doing the event for them,
Yes, because I'd rather work with somebody else.
And if you're the event planner, or if you're putting on your own event, the more that you're able to negotiate, the more people are going to want to do events with you, and the more events you'll be able to put on yourself too, because you've worked
those good deals.
You're working on getting more for less, right? You're still getting good things, that you're asking for more, and because you're asking, you're getting more. And that's really anything in life. I mean, if you want anything, you got to ask for it, right? You can't assume, well, they're not going to give me that. Well, they're not going to give it to you if you don't ask.
No.
So if you take away one thing from this episode today, it's ask. Ask. If there's anything, there's no stupid question, there's no stupid ask. It's like, hey, you ask, and the worst thing that they can say is no. Right? And then at least you know, and then you can even come back with, are you sure? Because so-and-so over here is working with me on that, and I'd really like to work with you guys, but if you're not able to do that for me, so maybe you can go back and check on that for me, right?
Yep, that's a perfect way of getting what you want.
Because if you're like, well, I'm going to go over here to someone who is,
somebody
but
else.
I'd really like to work with you, so again, you're going to lose my business if you're not able to do something with this. A lot of times they're able to take a step back, and it's amazing how they can come to the table and, oh, actually, we can do this, or we're able to do that, or hey, how about we do this?
Or 25% off of that instead of 50.
Another question the venues ask you is, well, who else are you, reaching out to about your event? And you're like, I'm reaching out to everybody. Right? Because they want to know, are we the only ones? Are you looking? No, you're not the only one. I'm looking at lots.
Yes.
So, and again, I'm looking for
everyone around your area.
The best venue. I'm looking for the best rates. I'm looking for the best space. I'm looking for the best benefits that you can give me.
I want to come back every year.
And we want to continue a relationship. So if you find a place, say, we want to come back here and continually do events. So what's the best you can do for me?
They love hearing that.
Yeah. Because they're like, oh, well, it's not a one and done. They're planning on coming back next year or later this year or whatnot. And
couple events a year.
They could then, it's not just a one-time transaction. It's something that they can see, okay, let's do this, and then we could possibly have more business in the future.
Yes.
Anything else on that? No. So, main thing, when you're talking to venues, ask. Ask for what you want. More. And then when you've agreed to things, then before you sign the contract, that information must show up in the contract before you sign it. If it's not, and it's like, oh, everything's there except for this one thing, then you go like, hey, we agreed to this, can you please add that? There's no space. Great, put an addendum on the end of the contract that shows that, right? That has that. They'll do that. And if not, you write it up and send it to them and they sign it too, right?
Yes.
So, but most places, they understand addendums. You add additional things to it, or there's a note section or a detail section where you can put more details in there. Do not sign the contract unless everything that you've agreed to verbally is in there. Okay?
There you go.
Because the time that you sign the contract and they say, oh, yeah, it's fine, we agreed to that, and it's not in there, is the time you're going to get burned.
Because don't forget, they have a boss. That's all they can say is, he said I can't do this, and it wasn't in the contract. So.
And they're thinking, well, it's no big deal. It's no big deal.
But it's 10 grand to you.
Right. So you've got to ask for what you want, and then it's got to show up verbatim what you need in the contract. And as long as everything's in there, then you can sign it with confidence. And that's how you go forward signing contracts, knowing that you're okay, because you have everything listed out that you want and that you've agreed to in there, and you know what you're getting yourself into.
Do they need a lawyer to look over anything?
No.
Okay.
No. Just know what you're asking for and make sure it's listed out in there. Now, if you do want a lawyer, that's your own prerogative and your own business. But most of the time, you don't need one. The contract that the venue has put together is
to cover their butt.
So make sure the things are in there to cover yours, and you'll be fine.
Okay.
If you feel more confident having a lawyer look at it, then by all means do that. I'm not of legal counsel over here, so you do what you feel best to do. The main thing I'm gonna tell you is make sure that everything you want is in your contract and ask for what you want. Okay. And this is for venues and in life. When you ask for what you want,
that's right,
you get more of what you want.
Ask.
Alrighty, I think that's everything for today, guys. So thank you so much for spending your time with us. Remember, take this information and put it to use. Take action on it.
Yes.
And we'll come back next week with another brand new episode. And in the meantime, remember, it only takes an instant to make an impact. Bye, guys.
We love hearing from you, so please leave your comments and feedback and submit any questions you have. We'd also love for you to like us on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest, and subscribe to our page on YouTube and hit that little bell to be notified when our videos go live. If this episode resonated with you or you got value out of it, please share and tell your friends and colleagues so together we can continue to build a thriving event community. Sharing and telling others really does help, and that's how we're able to grow this community and reach more people. We appreciate you and look forward to bringing you another value-packed episode. Remember, it only takes an instant to make an impact.